Queen Lyra stood at the balcony of her palace, her eyes gazing over the vast city that stretched beneath her. The towers of the Caloran Empire rose high into the sky, their sharp silver tips gleaming in the pale light of the twin suns. The streets below were filled with people going about their daily lives, unaware of the heavy burden their queen carried. Lyra's heart weighed down with a knowledge that had plagued her for months. Without a mate, her kingdom was doomed. The ancient laws of the Caloran people demanded that every ruler be bonded with a mate before reaching a certain age. The bond was not just a personal connection, it was a promise that ensured the survival of their species. Without it, the Calorans would lose their ability to reproduce, and their empire would slowly wither away. Lyra had known this for as long as she could remember, but now, as her age grew and the pressure from her advisors became unbearable, the reality of it all hit her harder than ever. Lyra was a queen, a leader of one of the most powerful species in the galaxy, yet she had never found a mate who could stand by her side. There had been suitors, of course, but none had proven worthy. Some were weak, others too ambitious, and some simply didn't understand the heavy responsibility that came with being her partner. She had rejected them all, believing that her rule would not be defined by her personal desires. But now, the time had come. Her advisors had made it clear that she could no longer rule without a mate. The court was growing restless. Her people were afraid, whispering among themselves about what might happen if the queen failed to meet the ancient tradition. The once mighty Caloran Empire was on the brink of collapse, and without an heir, it would crumble into dust. Lyra turned away from the balcony and paced across the grand chamber, her long, flowing robes sweeping behind her. She needed a solution, but she didn't know where to find one. Her trusted advisor, Lord Varric, entered the room, his footsteps heavy against the stone floor. His face was grim as usual, his sharp features framed by the dark cloak he always wore. "My queen," he said, bowing low. "The council is waiting for you. They are growing impatient." Lyra nodded but said nothing. She was tired of their constant demands. She had done everything she could to keep the empire strong, but no matter how hard she worked, it always seemed like something was missing. She glanced out the window again, wondering if she would ever find the one person who could make her whole. "Do you have any suggestions, Lord Varric?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with frustration. "Do you think there is anyone suitable who could bond with me?" Varric hesitated. "There are many among our people who would gladly take the throne beside you, but none of them are worthy of your crown, my queen. We need someone who is strong, intelligent, and capable of standing by your side in these troubled times." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. "I have never believed in forced unions, Lord Varric, and I will not marry someone simply to fulfill a law." Varric bowed his head. "I understand, my queen, but the law is clear. If you do not bond soon, the future of the Caloran people will be in jeopardy." Lyra's eyes flickered with determination. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was different. The thought of being bound to someone she didn't love, someone who might only seek her throne, was unbearable. She had always prided herself on her independence, but now that independence seemed to be slipping away. "What do you suggest, then?" she asked, her voice cold. "There is one option," Varric said, his voice low. "It is not a traditional path, but it is one that has been suggested by a few of the younger members of the council. We could consider an outsider." Lyra furrowed, her brow. "An outsider? Are you suggesting we marry someone from another species?" Varric nodded slowly. "Yes, my queen. There is a human diplomat who has been visiting our planet in recent months. His name is Jason, and he is known for his courage and intelligence. While he is not a Caloran, his people have shown great promise in the Galactic Council. It may be possible for him to bond with you, though it would be unconventional." Lyra shook her head in disbelief. "A human? Why would I ever consider such a thing? They are too different from us." "I know it seems strange," Varric said, "but desperate times call for desperate measures. If we do not act soon, we may lose everything. Perhaps this human could be the solution we've been searching for. Lyra felt a strange knot in her stomach. A human. The thought seemed absurd, yet the more she thought about it, the more the idea lingered. Jason, the human diplomat, had shown promise in his dealings with the other species. He was intelligent, resourceful, and had a reputation for being able to solve problems that no one else could. Could he be the one to save her people? Could he truly be her mate? Lyra's mind raced as she considered the possibilities. She had heard whispers of this human, but she had never met him. To consider him as a potential mate was beyond her understanding. But if he was the key to saving her people, could she ignore the possibility? "I will meet him," Lyra said finally, her voice firm. "Bring him to me." Lord Varric bowed again. "It shall be done, my queen." As he turned to leave, Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this human could be the answer she had been searching for. But as she stood alone in her chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that meeting him would change everything. For better or for worse, her destiny was now tied to a man from a distant world. Jason had never imagined he would end up on a planet like Solora. He had come to negotiate a trade agreement between Earth and the Soloran Empire, a peaceful mission he'd been chosen for due to his diplomatic skills. What was meant to be a brief visit had turned into something far more complicated. His shuttle had been sabotaged by an unknown enemy faction, forcing him to crash land on this strange world. The first thing Jason noticed as he stepped out of the wrecked shuttle was the sheer beauty of Kalora. The sky above was painted with two suns casting an ethereal glow over the sparkling white buildings that lined the city. The air was crisp and clean, and the scent of alien flowers filled the atmosphere. He marveled at how peaceful it seemed, yet something felt tense, as if there was an invisible weight pressing down on the planet. Little did he know, that weight was the future of the entire Kaloran Empire. Jason was guided by his Kaloran escort through the grand streets of the capital. The city was alive, yet the people moved with a certain unease, their eyes watching him with curiosity. As an outsider, Jason had become the subject of whispers. He didn't mind. It was to be expected when you were the only human in a crowd of thousands of aliens. He kept his head high, trying to focus on the task at hand, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the reason for his presence here. The Celarans had made it clear they needed him. But for what exactly? It was still unclear. He had learned quickly that Solora's leadership was in turmoil. Queen Lyra, the monarch of the Kaloran people, was said to be facing a crisis that threatened to unravel the entire empire. But Jason wasn't there to get involved in politics. He was just a diplomat, a negotiator, not a warrior. Yet as he moved through the city, he could feel the growing tension in the air. Something was coming, and he had a feeling he wasn't going to like it. Soon Jason found himself at the Grand Palace, standing before the towering gates that guarded the Queen's residence. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves. He had been summoned to meet the Queen. He had heard stories about her, how she was powerful, intelligent, and unyielding. Her people respected her, but rumors also whispered of her struggles, of the pressure she faced from all sides to secure her future and the future of her people. When he was escorted into the throne room, Jason's breath caught in his throat. There she stood, Queen Lyra. She was tall, regal, and exuded an aura of authority that made him feel small, yet deeply aware of the immense power she held. Her skin was a smooth metallic silver, with streaks of sapphire running along her limbs. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, held a storm of emotions, but there was something in them, something familiar, that drew him in. Lyra's gaze fixed on Jason, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was silent, save for the sound of their breathing. Jason stood still, taking in her beauty and strength, but he was also cautious. This was not just any queen. She was the leader of an entire empire, and her next words could change everything for him. "Human," Lyra said, her voice cold yet commanding. "You stand before me, a stranger in my world. Do you know why you are here?" Jason took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. I'm here to help, Your Majesty. My mission was to establish trade relations between Earth and your people. But it seems there's been some misunderstanding, and now I find myself stranded here. I'm not sure what's expected of me. Lyra studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Jason wondered if she would dismiss him entirely, but then she motioned for him to approach. You are here because your people have shown themselves capable. We need your help, she said, her tone softer now, though still firm. But it's not the help you may think. Your mission, as well as my empire, is at risk. Jason's confusion deepened. What do you mean? I'm just a diplomat. I don't understand. Lyra interrupted him. I am the queen of the Celerans, and my people are on the brink of extinction. Our traditions demand that I bond with a mate to ensure our survival, but I have no mate. My advisors say I must choose or the empire will collapse. The law cannot be ignored. Jason's mind raced. He had heard the rumors, but hearing it from the queen herself made it all too real. The Calorans were facing a crisis and Lyra was at the center of it. But why was he being pulled into it? I don't understand, Jason said slowly. Why are you telling me this? Lyra met his gaze directly, her expression unwavering. Because, human, I need you to be my mate. Jason blinked in surprise. His heart skipped a beat. What? You want me to marry me? Lyra interrupted, her voice steady. It is the only way to save my people. You are an outsider, yes, but your species has qualities that are rare even among the Kellerans. Your strength, your adaptability, your courage. These are things I need. I have studied your people and believe that together we may find a way to overcome this challenge. You are the key. Jason's mind swirled with confusion and disbelief. He was a simple diplomat, caught in a political and personal drama far bigger than he could have imagined. But I'm human. I don't even know if I'm ready for this. I don't know anything about your customs, your people, your world. How can I? Lyra stepped closer, her violet eyes never leaving his. You do not have to understand everything now. I do not expect you to love me, human, but I need you to help me save my people. That is all that matters. The room seemed to close in around Jason. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. He had come here to negotiate trade, but now he was being asked to bond with a queen, to change the course of an entire empire. And though he didn't know what the future held, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was something he couldn't walk away from. I need time to think, he said quietly, unsure of what else to say. Lyra nodded, though there was a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. You have until the evening. Then you must give me your answer. Jason left the throne room, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and uncertainty. As he walked through the palace halls, he couldn't help but wonder what his next step should be. Could he truly say yes to such an impossible request? What did it mean for his future? And more importantly, what would it mean for the future of Calora? Jason spent the next few hours walking through the grand halls of the Kelleran Palace, his mind spinning with confusion and uncertainty. Queen Lyra's words echoed in his mind. I need you to be my mate. The request seemed impossible, and yet, as he walked through the vast corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the only way forward for both of them. He had never imagined his life would take a turn like this. He had come to Salora with high hopes of establishing peaceful trade relations, but now, his role seemed to have shifted to something much greater. A mate? How could he, a human, bond with a queen of an entirely different species? What did that even mean? And more importantly, could he say yes to something that would change his life forever? As he pondered, he found himself in a quiet garden within the palace grounds. The sunlight filtered through the leaves of strange, alien trees, casting soft shadows on the ground. Jason took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. It wasn't easy, but the tranquility of the garden seemed to soothe him, even if just for a moment. Human, you are still here. Jason turned to see Queen Lyra standing at the entrance of the garden, her regal figure framed by the tall, shimmering walls of the palace. Her eyes, deep and thoughtful, were fixed on him. Despite her imposing presence, there was something different about her now, something softer, more vulnerable. He could feel it in the way she stood, as if she, too, was uncertain about what the future held. I needed some time to think, Jason said, stepping forward cautiously. This is a lot to take in. Lyra nodded, her gaze never leaving him. I understand. You must be confused. I have never asked anyone for such a thing. But I know my people are on the brink of collapse, and my position as queen is at risk. Without a mate, I cannot ensure the future of my empire. And without that, the Solorans will be lost. Jason took a step closer, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. I don't know what to say, Your Majesty. I'm just a human. I don't understand your customs, your world. I don't even know what being your mate would mean. Lyra's eyes softened, and for the first time she looked less like a queen and more like someone who was truly human in a way. I do not expect you to understand everything at once, but I need someone strong by my side. Someone who can help me lead my people into the future. It's not just about love, Jason. It's about survival. Jason felt a surge of emotion. He wasn't sure if it was sympathy or something deeper. He had come here to help, and now he was faced with a choice that seemed almost impossible. But as he stood there, looking into Lyra's eyes, he realized something. This wasn't just about him or her. It was about their worlds, about saving something far greater than either of them alone. I'm not sure if I'm the right person for this, Jason said quietly. I've never been in a position like this before. I'm just a diplomat. I don't know how to rule, how to lead an entire species. Lyra stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. You do not need to rule, Jason. You simply need to be my partner. You need to help me make decisions, to be my equal. I need someone who can stand beside me and face the challenges that come with leadership. Someone who will not shy away from what is needed. Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of duty stirring within him. He had always believed in helping others, in doing what was right. But this was a different kind of responsibility. This was not just about offering advice or making deals. It was about saving an entire civilization, an entire species. What if I don't feel ready? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. What if I can't live up to your expectations? Lyra's expression softened even more. She reached out, her hand hovering for a moment before she placed it gently on his arm. You do not have to be perfect, no one is. But you must understand this, my people need hope. And right now you are the only one who can offer it. The warmth of her touch sent a wave of comfort through Jason, though he knew he wasn't yet ready to make such a decision. He needed more time, more answers. But the weight of Lyra's words stuck with him, and deep down, he knew that whatever happened next, this moment would change the course of his life. I can't promise anything yet, Jason said, his voice steadying. But I will help in any way I can. I'll learn what I need to, I'll do my best. Lyra nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile forming on her lips. That is all I ask. As the days passed, Jason spent more time in the palace, learning about Kelleran customs and their way of life. He spent hours with Lyra, discussing everything from politics to history to the unique traditions of her people. At first it was overwhelming, but the more time he spent with her, the more he began to understand the weight she carried. They continued to grow closer, but in a way that was different from anything Jason had ever experienced. It wasn't just about attraction or admiration. It was about partnership. He found himself respecting Lyra more with each passing day, not just for her strength, but for her vulnerability. Despite her power, she was human in the way she cared for her people, the way she feared for their future. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Lyra invited Jason to join her for a walk through the palace gardens. The air was cooler now, and the twin suns were setting, painting the sky with shades of red and orange. This is where I come to think, Lyra said as they walked side by side. I find peace here, even if just for a moment. Jason nodded, feeling the peace she spoke of. The garden was beautiful, alien flowers and colors he had never seen before, the soft hum of distant machinery in the background. Everything about Cellera was different, yet the serenity of the moment felt familiar, comforting. "I can see why you like it here," Jason said quietly. Lyra stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. "I need you to understand something, Jason. The decision we make will not only affect us, it will affect the future of my people. If we are to succeed, we must be united. There can be no hesitation, no second thoughts. Our bond must be strong." Jason looked into her eyes, seeing the depth of her conviction. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he made a decision. "I'll stand with you, Lyra. Whatever happens, I'll help you. We'll face it together." Lyra smiled, and for the first time, Jason saw a hint of warmth in her eyes that made him believe, maybe for the first time, that he was making the right choice. Jason awoke early the next morning, the golden light of the twin suns streaming through the tall windows of his chambers. He had barely slept the night before, his mind racing with thoughts of Queen Lyra, the Caloran Empire, and the heavy responsibility he was beginning to understand more each day. As he sat up, he could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Could he really go through with this? Could he truly bond with an alien queen, knowing the stakes were so high? He stood, stretching his limbs, and walked toward the large window. The view of Calora's city was breathtaking, with its gleaming towers and the distant hum of activity. But there was an undercurrent of tension in the air that Jason couldn't ignore. The Celeran people were anxious. He had seen it in their eyes, in the way they whispered behind closed doors. And from the looks of it, their concerns were only growing stronger. Jason had spent the last few days learning about Celeran society, their history, and their customs. He had also spent a lot of time with Lyra, talking about the future and the way forward for the Empire. The more time they spent together, the clearer it became that Lyra was not just a queen, she was a leader, burdened by the weight of her people's survival. And now Jason was entwined in that burden whether he was ready or not. As he walked toward the door, there was a soft knock. Jason opened it to find one of Lyra's advisors standing in the doorway, his face grim. "Jason, the Queen requests your presence," the advisor said. "There is a council meeting that requires your input." Jason nodded, his stomach tightening. He had been expecting this. Lyra had told him that the council was growing impatient, that the pressure on her to find a mate was intensifying. He wasn't sure what kind of input he could offer, but he knew one thing. Things were getting serious. The council room was large and imposing, its walls lined with intricate alien designs. The long table was filled with the most powerful figures in the Caloran Empire, each one watching him closely as he entered. Lyra was seated at the head of the table, her gaze fixed on him as he approached. The atmosphere in the room was thick, with tension. "Jason," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm, "we have discussed the future of the Empire for long enough. The Council believes it is time to make a decision. We cannot afford to wait any longer." Jason took a deep breath and nodded, trying to steady his nerves. "I understand," he said, though his heart was pounding in his chest. "But before we make any decisions, I need to know something. What happens if we don't act? What happens if we do nothing?" The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Lyra. She looked around the table, her expression unreadable. "If we do nothing," Lyra said slowly, "the Caloran people will lose hope. Without a mate, I cannot produce an heir. Our bloodline will end. Our enemies will see our weakness and they will strike. The Empire will crumble." The weight of her words hung in the air. Jason could feel the intensity of the moment. He had known the stakes were high, but hearing it from Lyra herself made it all the more real. The fate of an entire species rested on their decision. The council members began to speak, their voices rising in a heated debate. Some argued that the queen should choose a mate from their own people, someone who understood their culture and traditions. Others, more radical in their thinking, suggested looking beyond their species to find a solution. Jason could see that the divide among them was growing wider, and the pressure on Lyra was becoming unbearable. "I do not want to force this upon anyone," Lyra said, raising her voice to bring the room to silence. "But the longer we wait, the more we risk. We are on the edge of losing everything. Jason, the council wants your decision. They want to know if you are willing to accept this bond." Jason stood at the end of the table, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He had come here as an outsider, a simple diplomat, and now he was being asked to make a choice that would change the course of history. Could he truly step up to this challenge? Could he accept the role of a mate to a queen from another world? The eyes of the council were all on him, waiting for his answer. He looked at Lyra, whose expression was a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She was counting on him, and he couldn't ignore that. She had already sacrificed so much for her people, and now she was asking him to make a sacrifice of his own. I don't know if I'm ready," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I know one thing. I can't stand by and watch your people suffer. If this is what it takes to save them, then I'll do my part." Lyra's eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed to relax, though the burden of the decision still lingered in the air. She nodded slowly, acknowledging his words. "Then it is settled," she said, her voice steady once more. "We will proceed. The bond will be formed." Jason felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The decision had been made, but he knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be difficult, and the challenges they faced would not be easily overcome. But in that moment, standing before Lyra and the council, he realized something important. He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. He was a part of something much bigger than himself. As the council meeting came to a close, Lyra stood and motioned for Jason to follow her. They walked together through the grand corridors of the palace, the weight of the decision still hanging between them. "Jason," Lyra said quietly, "I want you to know that I do not take this lightly. This bond is not just for my people. It is for us too. We will face this together, whatever happens." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had made a choice, but he knew the path ahead would not be easy. The challenges would only grow harder, and the enemies they faced would stop at nothing to tear them apart. But as he walked beside Lyra, he realized that for the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone. They were in this together. The days that followed Jason's decision to bond with Queen Lyra were filled with activity, but also a growing sense of unease. Despite their resolve, the reality of what they were facing soon became evident. The Caloran court was divided, with some factions openly questioning the decision to accept a human as a mate. The pressure on Lyra intensified, and she was forced to confront her people's doubts while trying to maintain a sense of stability. Jason, meanwhile, found himself thrust deeper into the heart of Caloran politics. Though his role was still not entirely clear, he spent long hours with Lyra and her advisors, learning about the complex system of governance that had once held the Caloran Empire together. It was a world far more advanced than anything he had ever known, yet it was also fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse. One evening, after another long day of meetings, Lyra invited Jason to join her for a walk through the palace gardens. The air was cooler now, and the twin suns were setting, casting the sky in vibrant shades of red and orange. It was a peaceful scene, but the weight of the decision they had made still hung in the air. "You must feel like an outsider," Lyra said, her voice soft as they walked side by side. "I cannot imagine what it must be like to be thrust into the heart of such a complex and fragile situation." Jason nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He had spent the past few days trying to find his place in this strange new world. The more he learned about the Cellarans and their history, the more he understood the immense responsibility that came with being in Lyra's position. But there was still so much he didn't know, so much about her and about the future they were now bound to. "I do feel like an outsider," Jason admitted, "but I'm also starting to see how important this is. For you, for your people, and even for me." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes searching his face. "I know that this is not easy for you, Jason. You did not ask for this. But I must ask you to trust me. Trust that we are doing what is necessary to save my people, even if it feels uncertain." Jason glanced over at her, seeing the quiet strength in her posture, the determination in her voice. It reminded him of his own desire to help, to do what was right. But the weight of the decision was heavy, and he couldn't ignore the doubt that still lingered in his mind. "I do trust you, Lyra," he said. "I'm just not sure I trust myself. I don't know if I can live up to the expectations of your people, or even my own." Lyra stopped walking and turned to face him. Her expression was serious but not unkind. "Jason, this is not about living up to expectations. This is about survival. My people's survival. I need you by my side. Not as a ruler, not as a diplomat, but as a partner. Together we will face whatever challenges come." Jason felt a wave of emotion wash over him. It was not just the responsibility that weighed on him, but the bond they were beginning to form. He had never imagined that his life would lead him to a place like this, standing beside an alien queen who needed him not just for political reasons, but for something deeper. And despite his doubts, he knew that he couldn't turn away from that responsibility. "I'll stand by you, Lyra," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever comes, I'll be with you. I won't turn away." Lyra smiled, though the shadow of worry still lingered in her eyes. "Thank you, Jason. I know this will not be easy. But together, we will find a way." As they continued their walk, the tension that had been building for days seemed to ease, if only for a moment. But it was clear that their path would not be without its trials. The next morning, the storm that had been brewing finally broke. News came that a faction of Caloran nobles, led by Lord Darnus, had openly defied Lyra's decision and declared their opposition to her bond with Jason. They had sent a message to the royal court demanding that Lyra break her engagement to the human or face the consequences. The message was clear. They would not accept a foreigner as the queen's mate. Lyra, her face pale but composed, called for an emergency council meeting. Jason, standing beside her, felt a sense of urgency he hadn't anticipated. He had known that Lyra's position was fragile, but this was more than just political maneuvering. This was an outright challenge to her authority and to the very survival of her empire. Lord Darnus is one of the most powerful figures in the Caloran court, Lyra explained quietly as they entered the council chamber. "His influence runs deep, and his faction has always been a thorn in my side. But this is different. If I do not act swiftly, I risk losing everything." Jason could see the strain in her eyes, but there was no hesitation in her movements. She was a queen, and she was determined to fight for her people. And Jason, though uncertain, found himself standing by her side, ready to face whatever challenges came next. The council room was tense, the air thick with the weight of the decision that hung over them. Lord Darnus, an imposing figure with a sharp, angular face, stood at the head of his faction. His eyes flickered with disdain as he looked at Jason, his voice dripping with mockery. "You would have us believe that a human is the answer to our salvation?" Darnus sneered. "You have forgotten the traditions of our people, Queen Lyra. Your duty is to the Kelleran bloodline, not some foreign creature who does not belong." Jason's heart pounded as he stood at Lyra's side. He knew that his presence here was not welcome, but he refused to back down. Lyra had chosen him, and that decision was not one he was going to let anyone take away. "I have not forgotten my duty," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm, "and I will not let anyone stand in the way of what is necessary to save my people. Jason is my partner, and together we will face the challenges that lie ahead. If you cannot accept that, then you will be left behind." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Lord Darnus scowled, but there was nothing he could say to counter her words. For the first time in a long while, Jason saw a flicker of hope in Lyra's eyes. She was standing firm, not just for her people, but for the future she and Jason were trying to build together. The trial had begun. The tension in the council room was palpable. Jason stood beside Lyra, feeling every eye in the room burn into him, each one filled with judgment, suspicion, or disdain. Lord Darnus and his faction had just issued their final warning. If Lyra did not break her bond with him, They would take matters into their own hands. Lyra's back was straight, her face as calm and composed as always. But Jason could see the strain in her eyes, the weight of the decision she was about to make, the responsibility of an entire empire pressing down on her shoulders. She had already made her choice, but now she had to stand by it. And this time, it wasn't just about politics. It was about something deeper: trust, loyalty, and the future they both hoped to build. The council will not stand idly by while the Queen risks everything for a human, Lord Darnus declared, his voice cold and commanding. We will not allow this to continue. If you choose him, you choose the end of your rule. Lyra's eyes locked onto Lord Darnus. There was no fear in her gaze, only a quiet resolve. If I choose to live in fear of tradition and power, I choose to let my people suffer, she said, her voice unwavering. The Caloran Empire will not survive on fear. It will survive on strength, unity, and courage. Jason has shown me those things. He stands with me, not because of power, but because he believes in the future we can create together. The room fell silent. Even Lord Darnus seemed taken aback, his lips tightening in frustration. He had underestimated Lyra's resolve. But Lyra wasn't backing down. She had already made her decision, and she was willing to face whatever consequences came with it. Jason could feel the weight of the moment settling around them. This wasn't just a political debate. It was about everything Lyra had worked for, everything she had sacrificed. And now, it was about their future together. I have made my choice, Lyra continued, her voice steady. Jason is my partner. He is the one who will stand beside me, not because of blood or tradition, but because of what we can build together. And if that means losing some of you, then I will accept it. But I will not be swayed by fear or power. For a moment there was nothing but silence in the room. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to react to Lyra's defiance. Jason stood tall beside her, though he could feel the uncertainty inside him. He wasn't a ruler. He wasn't even supposed to be here. But he had made a promise to Lyra, and he would keep it no matter what. Finally, one of the older council members, a woman named Talia, spoke. You are a queen, Lyra. You are our queen. But this decision will affect more than just you. It will affect all of us. She looked at Jason, then back at Lyra. If we are to move forward, we must be united. I do not speak for all of us, but I believe that the future of the Caloran Empire lies not in blood, but in unity. If you believe that Jason can stand by your side, then perhaps it is time we rethink our traditions. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Talia was one of the few who had not openly opposed their bond. She had always been quiet, but now her words rang out as a beacon of hope. Lyra looked at Talia, her expression softening. Thank you, Talia. Your support means more than you know. Lord Darnus sneered. This is madness. You would let the future of our empire fall into the hands of a human? Lyra's voice was firm but gentle. It is not about his humanity, Lord Darnus. It is about what he and I can do together. My people need hope, not fear. They need unity, not division, and that is what I will give them. The room was still, but Jason could feel the shift. The decision had been made, not just by Lyra, but by the council. Slowly, one by one, more members began to speak up, some reluctantly, others with growing conviction. I see now, said Kieran, a younger counselor, that the Queen has chosen her path. Perhaps we should choose to walk with her, not against her. Jason looked around the room. The atmosphere was changing, shifting from one of opposition to one of acceptance, albeit reluctantly. The realization began to sink in. This was not just about politics. It was about the future. And as much as some of them resisted, they knew the Queen was right. The Caloran Empire could not survive on tradition alone. It had to adapt, to grow, or it would be lost. Lord Darnus's face reddened, with anger, but there was nothing he could do. The support for Lyra was growing, and with it the possibility of a united future. I still do not accept this, Lord Darnus muttered. But I see I have no choice. Lyra's eyes softened. You have a choice, Darnus. We all do. We can choose to move forward together, or we can choose to remain stuck in the past. The tension in the room began to fade, and though it wasn't unanimous, Lyra had won the day. The council had made its choice, not just to accept her decision but to support it, at least for now. As the meeting came to a close, Lyra turned to Jason. Her eyes were filled with a mix of relief and gratitude. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice soft but sincere. I could not have done this without you. Jason smiled, though he was still processing everything that had just happened. I didn't do anything. You made your choice. I'm just here to stand with you. Lyra placed her hand gently on his arm. You did more than you know. The days that followed were not easy. There were still factions within the Caloran court that were unhappy with the decision, and some resistance remained. But for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt a sense of hope. Together, she and Jason would lead the Caloran Empire into a new era, one not defined by tradition or fear, but by the strength of their bond and their willingness to fight for a future they could believe in. And as Jason stood beside Lyra, he realized that this was just the beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The trials they had faced had only strengthened their resolve. And with that strength, they could face anything.